Now, let me explain what I mean by context with this example, and then we can elaborate some more. Look at this word ekklesia. Ekklesia is what we translate into English from Greek as church. This word was invented by the Greeks. Ekklesia was the name the Greeks gave to a political grouping picked out by the Democratic government. Democrata should be familiar. That is where we get the word democracy from. It was something that was invented by the Greeks. Church or ecclesia in its Greco-Roman context was not a religious word. It was a political word. The way we define and use the word church, ecclesia, today is far removed and is not rooted in its original context and meaning. Centuries before the New Testament was written, the Greeks were using the word ecclesia to describe a group of citizens called out for governmental purposes. I'll repeat that. Centuries before the New Testament was written, the Greeks were using the word ecclesia as a political term to describe a group of citizens called out for governmental purposes. The concept of ecclesia is a group of hand-picked individuals who will receive the mind, thoughts, and intent of the ruler and make it legislation that will be implemented in the territory. Though the Greeks invented this word, it was really the Romans who adopted, developed, and implemented the ecclesia and its function into the heart of their empire. The Greeks were thinkers. The Romans took what the Greeks thought, their philosophies, their libraries, and then implemented them. So the ecclesia was gathered around the Roman emperor or king to hear and record his words. Then they were to see that his will and desires were being implemented across his kingdom. So the word ecclesia, which we translate as church in Greek, is actually correctly translated as called out ones. It's not a building. It's not a religious word. Now, notice that kings were the ones who had churches, not religious groups. Kings were the ones who had ekklesia, not religious groups. As I said, the ecclesia was gathered around the Roman emperor or king to hear and record his words. Then these called out ones, called ecclesia, were to see that the king's will and desires were being implemented across his kingdom. It is good to understand this word in its context, in its Greco-Roman context, for what Yeshua or Yesu or Jesus said in the book of Matthew 16 to start making some sense. Matthew 16, let us read. When Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And they said, "Some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." Now, these listed are not kings, so they cannot have an ecclesia. It's important. He saith unto them, "But whom say ye that I am?" And Simon Peter answered and said, "Thou art the Christ." Or the word Christ comes from the Greek, but in Hebrew is Mashiach or Messiah. which means anointed. In Hebrew thought, the Messiah is going to be a king. And I just said that only kings have ecclesias or churches. So now Yeshua is going to make a statement. Yeshua, who the authors of the New Testament are saying that he is the king of Israel, is now going to make a statement. What does he say? After Simon Peter has recognized or come to understand that he may be the king that they were waiting for, what does he say? And Jesus answered and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say unto thee, thou art Petros, and upon this Petra I will build my Ekklesia. There's a reason why I am using the Greek words, because the translation here is very poor. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. When Peter said that he was a king, now he can make the statement that he's going to build his Ekklesia, because, as I have said, it is only kings that have Ekklesia. Because you have said, I am a king, I will build my Ekklesia. He couldn't make this statement as John the Baptist, as Elias, as Jeremiah, as one of the prophets. Why? Because it is only kings that have Ekklesia, and these listed are not kings. This is why it's important to put the text in its Greco-Roman context. Because what was meant by Ekklesia, what was meant by church at that time is not what we mean by church today. Now notice that he said, I will build my Ekklesia. Why did he not say, I will build the Ekklesia? Because there were other ecclesias, there were other churches. Rome had theirs. Just as Rome has their ecclesia, he's saying that I will build mine ecclesia. Because he's making this statement in Caesarea Philippi. The text goes out of his way to tell us that when he came to Caesarea Philippi, when he came to the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he couldn't make this when he was in Nazareth. He can only make this statement here in Caesarea Philippi. Why? We'll have to understand the historical context. What had Rome done in Caesarea Philippi for Jesus to make this statement in Caesarea Philippi? This is how context is important, putting the text in its Greco-Roman context. What do I mean when I say Greco-Roman context? What do scholars mean when they say Greco-Roman context?